The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of a private estate in the English countryside. It was one of those deceptively quiet weekends where the British royal family attempted to shed the weight of their titles and behave like a normal, blended family. Prince William was present, his posture relaxed yet watchful, a habit ingrained since childhood. Also there was Tom Parker Bowles, the son of the Queen Consort, Camilla. The relationship between William and Tom had always been a complex tapestry of politeness and unspoken history. They were contemporaries, bound by the strange circumstances of their parents' marriage, yet a transparent wall of formality always stood between them. The gathering was informal. Cars were parked haphazardly near the old stables, and the sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted from the terrace. William, ever practical, had offered to help retrieve something from Tom's car. As they approached the vehicle, a dark luxury SUV, the mood was light. Tom unlocked it with a beep, walking around to the driver's side while William waited near the rear. It was then that William noticed the trunk lid was slightly ajar. Perhaps it hadn't been closed properly, or perhaps fate has a way of prying open the locked boxes of the past. Acting on instinct, William stepped forward and placed his fingers under the lip of the trunk, lifting it open to secure it properly. He wasn't snooping, he was simply tidying up. But as the trunk rose, the contents were revealed, and William froze. Inside, neatly stacked but clearly old, were bundles of papers. William's eyes, trained to observe everything, scanned the visible pages. They were not shopping lists or car manuals. They were handwritten letters. The looping, elegant script was unmistakable. It was the handwriting of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. Beside the letters sat leather-bound journals and sealed envelopes, their edges yellowed with age. For a moment, the world stopped. The sounds of the estate faded, replaced by the roaring of blood in William's ears. Tom, sensing the sudden silence, walked back to see what had happened. He found William standing rigid, his gaze locked on the contents of the trunk. It was a discovery that threatened to unravel the careful diplomacy of a lifetime, exposing a wound that time had supposedly healed. In that frozen moment, William wasn't the Duke of Cornwall or the future King of England. He was just a son, standing in the English countryside, staring at the ghost of his mother, hidden away in the trunk of his stepbrother's car. The question that hung in the air, heavier than the humidity, was not what was in the trunk, but why. The silence between the two men stretched, thick and suffocating. William's mind raced, piecing together a puzzle he hadn't known existed. Here were documents he had likely never seen, thoughts and words from his mother that should have been archived, protected, or given to her sons. Instead, they were here, in the possession of the son of the woman many in the press had labeled the other woman. Tom shifted uncomfortably. He saw the look on William's face, a mixture of shock, confusion, and a deep, burgeoning hurt. The discovery was not malicious on Tom's part, but it was undeniably incriminating. Rumors had circulated for years that Camilla had kept a meticulous archive of her life, a collection that inevitably intersected with Charles's and, by extension, Diana's. But to see the physical proof was something else entirely. William's mind drifted back to his childhood, to the tense phone calls, the whispered conversations, the palpable sadness that clung to his mother like a shadow. He thought of the Van Cutsum family, old friends of his father who had once tried to warn the Prince of Wales about the crowd his sons were keeping, a crowd that included Tom Parker Bowles. There had been concerns about influences and lifestyles, but this was different. This wasn't about youthful indiscretion. This was about the deliberate preservation of a painful history. He looked from the trunk to Tom, searching his face for an explanation. "Tom?" William's voice was low, devoid of its usual warmth. "What is this? Why do you have my mother's letters?" It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of 2 decades of family strife. Tom, to his credit, didn't try to lie or deflect. He explained, his voice rushed, that they were part of his mother's personal archives. Items collected over the years, stored and mostly forgotten. He had been tasked with moving some boxes and hadn't even looked inside this particular one. It was, he insisted, a thoughtless oversight, not a conspiracy. But to William, the distinction was irrelevant. The damage was done. This wasn't just a collection of papers, it was a vault of private pain. He saw sealed envelopes addressed to his father in his mother's hand, likely from the separation. And he imagined the contents: pleas, explanations, anger, or sorrow. These were not museum pieces. They were the raw nerves of his family's history, and they had been treated as ordinary luggage. The trust that William had carefully, grudgingly built with the Parker Bowles clan evaporated in an instant. He realized in that moment that the blending of families was a myth. There was his family, and there was theirs. And his mother's legacy, it seemed, was still a battleground between the two. What happened next was a masterclass in controlled fury, a skill William had perfected under the tutelage of his grandmother, the late Queen. He did not shout. He did not cause a scene that the tabloids would love. Instead, he became ice. He gently, reverently lifted a single envelope from the trunk. He held it for a moment, and as if weighing the soul inside, and then looked directly at Tom. "This," William said, his voice quiet but absolute, "ends now. These are not your family's possessions to move around like old furniture. They are mine. They are Harry's. They are our history." Without waiting for a response, William closed the trunk lid, the thud echoing like a door slamming shut on a chapter of strained tolerance. He walked away, the envelope tucked inside his jacket, leaving Tom standing alone by the car. The afternoon had turned cold. William found a private room in the estate house. He needed to think. This was not a matter for public debate. It was a matter of sovereignty over his own narrative. He thought about the path his father, King Charles, had often taken, one of appeasement and patience. But William was of a different generation. That he had watched his uncle, Prince Andrew, become a pariah due to scandal and poor judgment. He had seen how the firm had to act decisively to protect the institution. In that room, William decided that the days of allowing the past to be mishandled were over. This discovery was a symptom of a larger rot, a casual disregard for the privacy and pain his mother endured. If Tom Parker Bowles could have these letters in his trunk, what else was out there? What other archives existed in the possession of the Camilla camp? He thought of his wife, Catherine, and their fierce protection of their own children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. He thought of the recent legal battles they had fought to protect their family from intrusive photographs, winning a case against a French magazine that had invaded their privacy. He understood now. More than ever, that privacy was a precious commodity that had to be seized, not requested. William knew the coming days would be difficult. There would be conversations with his father. There would be tension with Camilla. But he was no longer the young boy walking behind his mother's coffin. He was the Prince of Wales, and he would draw a line in the sand. The discovery in the trunk was a violation, and he would ensure it was the last. The stunned silence that followed his actions was just the beginning. The real storm was yet to come. The aftermath of the discovery sent shockwaves through the royal households, though to the public, everything appeared serene. Behind palace walls, however, the ground had shifted. William, true to the silent promise he made in that countryside courtyard, I acted with a resolve that left courtiers and family members alike scrambling to adapt. He did not demand a public apology or air the dirty laundry in the press. That would be undignified and would only hurt the crown, the very institution his mother had loved. Instead, he handled it privately, but with an iron fist. He went directly to his father, the king. The meeting was reportedly tense but necessary. William presented the evidence, not as an accusation against Camilla directly, but as a failure of process. How, he asked, could such intimate documents simply turn up in someone's car? The king, ever the pragmatist, and a man who loathed confrontation, saw the validity in his son's outrage. It was agreed, quietly and without fanfare, that a full audit of all personal archives held by members of the royal family and their extended relations would be conducted. More importantly, it was understood that the Parker Bowles family would cooperate fully. The days of blurred lines between the Spencer legacy and the Camilla household were over. For William, the incident became a catalyst. He saw it as a final, painful gift from his mother, a sign that it was time to truly take control of his future and the future of his family's memory. He reflected on the burdens of protection he had felt since he was a teenager, chafing against police bodyguards and the lack of privacy. But this was different. This was protecting a legacy, not just a person. He also thought of his brother Harry, thousands of miles away in California. Though they were estranged, as William knew that if Harry ever found out that their mother's private letters had been treated so carelessly, it would be another wound, another justification for the mistrust that poisoned their relationship. In a way, William was protecting Harry too. Weeks later, a discreet courier arrived at Kensington Palace. He carried a simple archival safe box. Inside were the letters, the diaries, and the envelopes William had seen in the trunk, along with several other items that had been found during the audit. William took the box to his private study, a room filled with light and overlooking the gardens. He didn't open them that day. He wasn't ready. He simply placed the box on a shelf near a cherished photograph of his mother laughing. He ran his hand over the lid, a silent vow passing between him and the ghost in the frame. The story that had begun with a flung open trunk and a stunned silence did not end with a confrontation. It ended with a quiet assertion of power and a son finally bringing his mother's secrets home, where they belonged. The world never saw what William did next, but those who knew him best said he carried himself differently after that day. Lighter, somehow, as if he had finally closed a trunk of his own.